With Buffalo losing 3 out of their last 4 games, do you think that they have a chance of missing the playoffs here?
Oh, without a doubt. Well, first of all, let's just be frank here. They have been playing like absolute shit the last couple of weeks. We have said it multiple times on this podcast, personally to one another and to several people. They don't look the same as they did last year. This is not the same Buffalo team. Personnel wise, they may have a lot of returning people from the same team as last year, but whether it's the play calling, whether it's the mindset of Josh Allen, whether it's the fact that they have the inability to run the football consistently, I don't know what it is. This is not the Buffalo Bills that we saw last year compete for a potential AFC championship. I'm looking at this team and I'm saying, first and foremost, the defense got annihilated in that first half. The offense was incapable of moving the ball positively towards the opponent's side of the field. And then you go and you look at Josh Allen and his decision making, the interception, for example, absolutely terrible. You being rushed or not, you were already out of the tackle box or out of the pocket, throw it away, but you have this bad habit of trying to make plays with the strength of your arm, and you threw an interception right to Richard Sherman. The man has what? When was the last time Richard Sherman played meaningful football? Like, God knows, a couple weeks ago before he got hurt with his hamstring. I, I don't know. Then you don't run the football basically the entire first half when the game was within reach at some point within the first quarter and some change. You have a total of 19 rushes, but 12 of them are from your quarterback. Josh Allen had 109 yards on the ground. He almost matched Leonard Fournette. He was short of Leonard Fournette's total of yards by 4 total yards with 7 less carries. The starting quarterback almost outrushed the lead running back on the opposing team. Does that not scream an issue for you? Because Matt Breida and Devin Singletary together had 7 touches. I don't understand this at all. I know that I mock Frank Reich as the Colts head coach for not being able to run the football, but man, something is going on in Buffalo to where they say, we just don't feel like it. We're just not going to, and we have no interest in doing it. So you'd rather run your franchise quarterback 12 times, and a couple of those hits that he took for those rushes were pretty big. I mean, as big as Josh Allen is, you don't want your franchise getting cracked by Devin White and Levante David and Ndamukong Suh and the rest of that defensive front that the damn Tampa Bay Buccaneers had. And yet this is the scenario that they were put in. Bad defense, terrible offense, and late game heroics, man. You can't wait until every single fourth quarter to make a comeback. I mean, literally, it was a tale of two halves mirrored. Buffalo scored 3 points in the first half. Tampa scored 3 points in the second half. Tampa in the first half scored 24 points. Buffalo scored 24 points in the second half. Like, it was legit the tale of two opposite sides. It made absolutely no sense. Granted, it ended up going into overtime to where Tom had to throw the game-winning touchdown to Perriman, which was 6 points, and that was the game-winning deciding factor. But within the 4 quarters, it was legit 0-3, 0-3, 7-17, 7-17. Like, you cannot do this to compete in the AFC. You cannot do this to compete in the playoffs. Buffalo is learning right now. They're in the shit, and they're just not playing good football whatsoever. They cannot continue to do this if they plan on trying to make some kind of postseason run. And if I believe I've done the math correctly, they're going to have to win out with how competitive the AFC wildcard is now starting to become.
I think at this point, I think they're definitely at risk of missing the playoffs. And I've always been on the mindset this year that Buffalo, from top to bottom on this roster, I think they're one of the most well-rounded units throughout the entire NFL. But the main issue that I see primarily with the Bills is two things. Brian Dable, who is the offensive coordinator for the Bills, I think he's got to face some scrutiny for his play calling throughout this season, and you could even say last season to a certain extent as well. They just do not run the football effectively with their running backs whatsoever. They don't even really make an effort to do so. It's like you said, Kevin, with Josh Allen being the featured running factor for that team, it's going to leave the Bills in a situation where Josh Allen is going to take some unnecessary hits, and it could risk his health moving forward in his career. And even despite the fact that the Bills don't run the ball consistently as a unit offensively, I thought against Baltimore, and not Baltimore, against Tampa, that they ran the ball extremely effectively with Devin Singletary when he got touches. There were multiple plays where Devin Singletary was getting at least 5 to 10 yards. He had actually, I think, 1 or 2 runs against Tampa where he was getting over 20 yards a carry. But they just don't do it consistently on that side of the ball. And I got to focus on Brian Dable in that regard because the offensive play calling is so one sided with passing the ball. They're just a one-dimensional offense right now. And even though that they got to the AFC Championship last year because they relied on Josh Allen to carry that offense with his arm, defenses are scheming against that this year, and they are not allowing Buffalo to take advantage of what Buffalo took advantage of last year, which took them all the way to the AFC Championship game. So I think the second factor that I have to look at with Buffalo is they just can't finish. These last 2 losses against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots, they had ample opportunities to win these games at the end. They had this red zone drive at the end of the game to put them up over Tampa with about 30 seconds to go. They're on Tampa's 6-yard line, and they can't punch it in. They end up kicking a field goal. It leads to an overtime period, and then Tampa wins on a game winner from Tom. And then last week, similar situation. They had 2 red zone opportunities to score last week against New England. They come up with 0 points and lose that game by 4 points. They're losing these games right at the end when they have ample opportunities to execute and win those games, and they just can't do that. So Brian Dable's offensive play calling, I think you have to start putting that into question. And just these late game decision-making errors that the Bills are making on the offensive side of the ball, it's costing them wins, and it could cost them the playoffs if they keep it up like this.